Welcome to Reed's Spider-Man Crawl Space Edition. Check us out at the SpiderManCrawlspace.com. Well, I'm here, guys, to finally review Amazing Spider-Man 80, aka 881, and of course the 80 big issue, aka the Beyond tie-in, and then move on to, of course, issue 81, aka 882, and the Miles Morales crossover with issue 33 of Miles Morales Spider-Man, and wrap it all up with the Spider-Man Black Cat Death of Doctor Strange one-shot. So let's get into the conclusion here to, of course, issue 80 here, of course, the Kraven storyline. So first of all, the pros. I have to say this actually storyline is a lot of fun. There's a lot of interesting things between the hallucinative drugs that have been taken with Ben and how Kraven's basically talking to him, and especially with Ben realizing he is, like he said, a shell of a man, and how he sees an emptiness about everything about him and how it's really degraded a lot of him. I think I like how that's done, is it really starts pulling into the core of Ben believing he is kind of a fake over everything. And I also like some of the visualizations in the storyline really great as the hallucinations guard, whether it's from the Kraven with the Dormammu head, or of course seeing the various members of the Beyond Corporation, of course, give him the kind of anti-drug to help him get over the hallucinations. It's an enjoyable storyline as well as the pieces, and I think the wonderful cast members with Janine, I think, is the best, that she's tired of sitting on the sideline, tired of Beyond telling them what to do, and all the other issues that are occurring in the story. But that kind of leads to the cons. I mean, this storyline, why it gives a little bit more with the current Kraven and everything, you understand why he's saying that how Spider-Man's become more of the corporate stooge in the business instead of being the pure hero that he used to be, just like he is like the hunter. It kind of falls apart because of the storyline. Plus, also, as I said, a lot of plot contrivance on this too. The costume is damaged due to the tips from Kraven's costume as well as his attacks after he just got an upgrade, and also how Ben just sure must just take some more Beyond drugs to, of course, cure the other drugs that are in his system, and then of course Kraven blowing himself at the end, and you know, everybody knows that's not really true. And of course, the Beyond Corporation giving him that finger wag, especially Miss Danger saying, "What do you think you're doing, bad Ben? You be bad, Spider-Man. You go back to the corner and think what you did." Why, you know, keeping Janine, you know, worried and everything else. The story's kind of fun and everything else, and it's kind of a nice little motivation, especially the visuals are a lot of fun. But otherwise, it's not much of a conclusion for this kind of short storyline. So I give it a B-. It was okay. It wasn't a bad story. I kind of enjoyed a lot of parts of it and everything. And I think McKay did a nice little job where he could, but it just really wasn't too much in the long run. Which actually perfectly leads us to, of course, issue 80 Bay, or Beyond, with, of course, as they say on the cover, hottest couple in comics is back together. That's right, Aunt May and Dr. Octopus. Also by McKay. So let's get into the pros in here. I do like how this storyline works about May going to the extremes, trying to help Peter, using a lot of her contacts and everything, and of course using Otto, who's kind of an expert. Also, too, kind of have fun as a kind of like the odd, strange couple and everything. Why, you know, Otto is constantly trying to persuade everything with May, and she knows that. But the fact that they're all there trying to do is just to help Peter. So I kind of like the little adventure they go on, and some of the comedy moments are great, especially when they're in prison, when they go after the UFOs to get the areas. The cookies, and Dr. Octopus saying it was made with so much love. You can tell he's just gritting his teeth. So there's a lot of fun characterization in this story. And it was kind of fun the way they were going through this. And there's a lot of continuity nods, like the Base 32, which goes back to the Master Planner. So there are storylines how Otto being a physicist and how he worked with a lot of biology and other issues was really good, as well as the dark part when he finds out about the Beyond Corporation's taking a lot of stuff he sold off back under Parker Industries, and now he's going to basically be coming after them and their Spider-Man because of all this situation. It's actually a great story and everything. I do like some of the moments, especially with Otto taking out the bad guys in the prison of the UFOs, or May working with Vapor. It makes some good storyline, but that kind of leads to the cons. After all this and everything's done, you know, May just finally says, you know, Otto, you don't change. I don't want this. I don't care if I don't want to help Peter anymore. It kind of makes the story very not needed, if that's the way it is, that May knew exactly how Otto was, what he was going to do, and he even explains to her and everything, and then all of a sudden she just can't do it after that. Also, for the things too, a lot of the gaps ever since the Mephisto deal with Otto have been kind of messed up too. He doesn't remember the gaps, yet he does remember Parker Industries, yet he remembers selling off things and how Beyond's messing him up, and now they're going to deal with the superior and my superior knowledge and superior this and superior this. I think Dan Slott just got $2 of royalties from how many times superior was mentioned in this issue. And why the artwork is great by Gomez and a couple other things, there's just some other issues with the storyline. It's a fun issue, and it does a lot with continuity, but it also shows a lot of the gaps and kind of just leads to the issue. And of course, the ending's very nice, where Peter actually comes out of his coma, that Otto actually was the good person, but the family like, oh yeah, this doctor just showed up and gave him an unneeded treatment, but hey, Peter's out of bed. Life is great. Well, the good news is at least Peter's out of bed, and May actually feels like it was worth it and everything else. But the storyline kind of falls on that, so I'm going to give that a B. It wasn't too bad of a storyline, but there's not really much to talk about that. And now that I'm done with the McKay issues, let's go over to, of course, Ahem's piece here with the storyline crossover with Miles Morales, very known as the turtleneck Spider-Man, with the current Beyond storyline here, both with issue 81 as well as Miles Morales 33. So I'm just going to put them together as a merged storyline and go right to the pros and cons of both issues. So first of all, I do like the fact that while they're doing with the copyright issue that was talked about last issue in issue 80 about Ben going off to Brooklyn talk with Miles, and he's really not really going out there to be angry and upset, and he understands that why it's a corporate issue with copyright as well as the namesake, and it kind of does infringe on what Beyond has over the Spider-Man name. He's not really going out there to cause any problems. He just wants to get to know that. He has kind of met Miles a little bit in the Spider-Man Armageddon storyline, so it's kind of a little bit of issue. I also like what they do with the costume, actually seeing the web wings and the glider, which is a nod to the first Spider-Man, Homecoming movie. And also some of the characteristics of Peter talking, I should say Ben talking about his days in Brooklyn. And the team up with Miles actually makes plenty of sense. Why Miles is kind of upset not knowing this is not Peter. And of course, some of the other issues going on with the story with, of course, Osmond's the plant machine robot that's tearing up Brooklyn. And their little hero fights very brief until they kind of realize that, what's really going on with the storyline and them teaming together to help them out. And I do like the fact that you're kind of getting this relationship as Miles is realizing Ben is kind of the, as he said, he doesn't know the whole answer, but Ben is technically a clone of Peter, and Miles is currently dealing with his own clone, which shift from the current storyline with the Assessor, which is what the storyline's all about. So I like the relationship that made both, like how Miles is not only understanding where Ben's coming from, but also how their relationship isn't the best and everything, and it kind of leaves with him setting Ben basically like, hey, you deal with that, I'll deal with me, Spider-Man. They have a problem, they know where they can do with me, which leads to, Miles talking to Gonk about a couple things about the trademark, and basically why Gonk explains, yes, Beyond has a point with all this. The truth is they technically can't because of the costume and because of everything with the area. He's like, just don't call yourself Spider-Man, and problem is solved. It's actually kind of an interesting little piece with the storyline, and I think the real strength of it is not only the interaction between Miles and Ben, but also between Miles and his own clone, Shift. I mean, Shift, why he's only limited to GURP as his own noise, since he is a completely shifting, clone on his last days. Who knows when he's going to live or die. But their relationship really shows about how Shift is more of that angry clone that is really upset of everything the Assessor did to his creation, and the fact that they're going off the Assessor to deal with all this, what he's doing with his storyline, why he just won't leave Ben and Shift alone with what everything is going on to it. I really like it because it does remind me a lot of Ben and Peter's early days during the original Clone Saga, which I think is a nice little piece there between Miles and Shift, but they have a little bit of a different storyline, especially since Shift was on the wrong side of everything, similar to when Ben was during the original Clone Saga. So it's really nice little relationship story with only so much action happening with the Assessor's men and them unveiling his lab that's been hidden in plain sight in the docks and the building areas in Brooklyn to leave the gold classic to be continued. But I really think the story really works best with the characterization bits, and the artwork is fantastic in both storylines between the action, the use of their suits, their spider powers, how they vary, as well as you can see the attitude and anger and misdirection from both Spider-Men. So it really works as a nice little storyline, but at the same time unless you're really following what's going on in Miles's book or really been doing it just to have a completion thing with Ben's book, it really doesn't add too much to the storyline. It's more to Miles' part of the story. So I'm actually going to give it a B+ because the writing's really nice, and I really like how this works in Miles' own book, which I do read on the side. So it's kind of good for a storyline there, and kind of takes a little bit of the corporation and copyright as well as patent issues that happen in the actual business world. As many people know, I am a business teacher, so I actually have to study and teach these kind of things. So I do like that both Ahem and of course McKay actually wrote this into the storylines for both of them. So it works nice, but I'm going to give it a B+. Now, guys, with all that said, let's get out of all the Spider-Man Beyond main books and Miles Morales and go to the one-shot of the current Death of Dr. Strange one-shot, Spider-Man, of course, here taking care of with that, and we'll talk about Black Cat. So let's get into the pros of the storyline. I really liked it right out the bat. Black Cat really does not like Ben, how Peter's up in all this, how it was his fault, the reason why the UFOs attacked, why Peter is sitting in the coma, as we realize the storyline is actually taking place before issue 79 of Amazing Spider-Man, before he gets woken up thanks to Dr. Octopus in issue 80 Bay. But I really like the fact they don't really have much trusting storyline until they get Dr. Strange's message about him dying and them going to Greenwich Village, where Wong even says, like, well, you're not really really Spider-Man, but due to these situations, we have to have this taken care of. And I really kind of like the storyline because it really shows the relationship between Ben and Felicia. It's only been carried so much over the last several years. So I really kind of like the relationship, and them dealing with all these different issues in the village and all these other small things that Doctor Strange really never talked about. But the two of them are more than able to handle it, because if you remember the symbiote Spider-Man storylines, they did a lot with Black Cat and Doctor Strange. So this is a nice nod to those Peter David storylines and doing it. But I think the really heart of this issue is, of course, with Jamaica, which is the janitor who's shown throughout the storyline, how Doctor Strange would actually show up to her at the end of shifts and actually bring her a homemade pretzel from the village and everything, that she was this hardworking person and everything. And she never really knew who Stephen Strange was. She just knew he was this very nice guy that would wait for her and help her onto the bus before she left her 6-hour shift. And we actually get to see a normal blue-collar worker as she's just trying to pay the bills and do a good job, and it's a thankless job and it's hard and stuff, but Doctor Strange brought just that little bit of kindness. That's something the storyline does. A lot of things with Doctor Strange has never been talked about. They always want to deal with the ego, the issue, him being kind of a thing. And there's several times during Jonathan Hickman's run of Avengers where they talked about, well, Doctor Strange, you're not really a good man. You don't do what you should do. And here that kind of reinforces it, that Stephen Strange did care about people, even the small people he knew that were underneath him, which was always an interesting part with him being a neurosurgeon. He always had the God complex about saving lives, but he also knew there were these people underneath him who really had to do their jobs to survive. So I kind of like that storyline was brought into it. And it's a nice little nod that Felicia just says, hey, Ben, you're Spider-Man, good luck to that, but this isn't going to last, and kind of leaves it on that with kind of a pretty area. It's not a bad one-shot. I really liked it between the artwork and the storyline, so I'll give it a B+. It was a really nice story. I enjoyed it. I think it ties very well in with the current Death of Doctor Strange storylines. Whew. All right, guys. I know it's been a couple weeks and I got on all this, and of course I was on an episode of the Spider-Man podcast. So thank you for being patient on everything here. I will return to my regular reviews again this coming Wednesday, and just before New Year's, as now the school semester is over, I have a little bit more time to myself too, so I can actually do these. And on that note, guys, check us out at the SpiderManCrawlspace.com for all your latest Spider-Man news, reviews, and more, especially with the current Spider-Man No Way Home. Check out that. Look for us on Discord and other social media sites. And on that note, everybody, I will see everybody later. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. And I'll see everybody on the crawl space.